This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tonya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward. Let's do a little bit of a market update.
When you say market update, do you want carrier updates, or do you want carriers equal markets, or do you want markets as in the marketplace? See, the insurance industry is so dang confusing because we use words like that.
I just really wish people would learn there, and there instead of worrying about what the word demure means. But I digress.
How does anybody learn the English language? If I'm a Spanish speaking as my first language and I'm trying to learn English, I'm just straight up telling you, why do some of the words sound the way they sound and spell the way they spell? And I think it's drifted over into the insurance industry tremendously. I've taught you to use the term market as in market access. So that's getting access to carriers. But then again, we also have the marketplace.
My husband and I were working remotely last week, and he and I would be in the same room for some of our calls. And so he would hear me and I would hear him. And you could actually see when I would say something, he would perk up because I was using terms that they use in the telecommunications industry, but I would be using them in a totally different way and vice versa. And you want to talk about getting confusing is when you're hearing your husband use insurance terms in something that is so totally different, and then your brain engages and you try to follow it, and it just doesn't happen.
It jacks up your vocabulary. We talk internally about using acronyms and doing all these different things and the words we say and use, and then hopefully helping our service reps and our producers, agents, just not use those same terms when they're talking to a consumer, because the consumer or the business owner has no idea what you're talking about when you talk in acronyms. And so I think it's a real issue, and we've talked about it before, and maybe we'll talk about it again, but a market update, carrier updates. These are important things because specifically on the personal line side, I'm witnessing some carriers win and are winning, maybe starting to win and create gaps. And other carriers, they're not winning. They're losing right now. And that is a little bit concerning.
Tell me the definition that you're currently using by saying winning.
When I'm saying winning, don't forget we're playing the infinite game. And winning means staying in business. It means perpetuating your business. It doesn't necessarily mean winning the game forever. The game is not over. When I'm using the definition of winning, it's in the sense of pulling out of this hardening market. They're being aggressive with pricing again. They're trying to find ways to go after market share. These are winning ingredients right now. Those companies that are maybe pulling ahead or pulling out of the hard market versus the carriers who are still stuck in this world of still trying to figure out how to not lose. That's some of what's going on, is they've lost so much over the last few years and they're still losing in terms of profitability. They're still losing in terms of the trends of profitability. And so they can't, for the life of them, even marginally think that they should start being aggressive or that they should go after market share because they're not profitable. So those are the ways that I see the winning and losing right now. It's the trend. Which way is the trend going? Some of those that are maybe not publicly winning yet are starting to win because they're trending towards that profitability, or they're trending towards a better place.
Are we going to turn this into a tea with Shane session?
I'm not naming names because I'm not underneath the hood. I don't know what their next quarter is going to be. I can only see what the public can see. I can't see anything that other people in the agency business, other industry folks, I can't see anything that they can't see. We all can see more than the general public because we understand, and we're seeing our own numbers, and we're seeing numbers if we go to things like mid-year conferences or we go to road shows with carriers. We hear different things. We hear different tones. Those are not super secret type level stuff. I am on one carrier's agent council, which I'm under NDA, so I can't obviously disclose anything there. I know a little more about that particular carrier, but I can't talk about that because of non-disclosure laws and agreements that I've signed to be on that council. So a little bit of this is obviously not super precise. And unfortunately, as much as I would love to spill the tea, I have nothing but speculation in order to spill the tea on. So no, I can't name names.
This is fun.
It's a
Shane
gossip.
does gossip.
It's a total gossip session, which I'm not a fan of at all, unless we're talking about market conditions in a podcast. And then I love gossiping a little bit. I will name one name because by now everybody's heard and understood that Geico is going to explore the independent agency channel, which either the apocalypse is near, pigs are going to fly, hell is freezing over, all of the cliches.
What does that look like for us? How does that change our landscape in the next 18 months?
These are opinions of Shane.
Which we're going to call the OOS.
OOS.
Of Shane.
The double OS. So instead of 007, I'm double OS.
There you go.
Shaken, not stirred. It has disruption reality to it in the marketplace. Number one, within the channel itself, it's going to be a big demand thing for agents. Agents obviously want to be able to leverage the advertising. It'd be no different than other heavy advertisers coming into the independent agency channel. I don't think it's the situation of Geico. I think it's the situation of a carrier who has been in a singular channel for so long, since its beginnings. As far as I know, it's been a direct channel carrier forever. It's spent gazillions and gazillions of dollars on advertising and brand building. Naturally, there's this leveraging within an independent channel. We're not used to having huge brands in terms of the top 2 or 3, the State Farm. There is the reality that Progressive plays in all channels. Most carriers play in all channels. And the reality of it is that when you look at Geico's spend and Geico's brand, it's just up in the top of the pinnacle of brand building. And so there's that capability of being a channel disruptor within the independent agency channel, because you have a lot of carriers still finding their way and still trying to get back to profitability, while you have these other carriers who are there and starting to grow again and starting to try to gobble up market share. The issue of the day, yes, auto's a problem, but auto historically is more profitable than property. And you have a lot of independent agency carriers who are property heavy because the independent agency channel has forever and a day been built on writing property, homeowners. And so homeowners first get the auto as a companion. And then you have this carrier coming in and basically going to be an auto player. And so they're not going to be a property player. And so they're going to come in and be an auto push, and that's going to put some pricing pressure on the channel. It's going to put some disruption into the channel. Independent agencies have to play this smart. We all have to be intelligent about it. We have to look at the big picture and understand that we are independent agencies and that not a singular carrier makes or breaks our agencies. That's something that has always been true. It has to continue to be true, even when you go down this path. I have no idea what compensation looks like. I don't know if there's contingency and profit sharing. I don't know all the details of the entry into the independent agency channel, but I know there are carriers that are there that have those things in place. Who's being my partner today? Who have I partnered with? Who's partnered with me over the last several years as I've endured this hard market, and we've endured this hard market together. And then we have this reality of a new entrant to the channel that's going to be a disruptor. Trying to take this neutral, maybe journalistic approach, if you like that or not. There is the reality of this all coming together and being an interesting dynamic for the independent agency channel.
As Geico comes on board, and if rates are significantly less, the salesperson in a lot of us is going to kick in, and it's going to be easier to sell.
Absolutely. And especially after dealing with price pressure for so long, and we're worn out, we're tired, we're exhausted. Know that this is going to be a challenge for agency owners with their sales staff. How you manage this retention of your existing carriers and your relationships. Because look, those existing relationships aren't going to be okay with decreasing retention rates. And so you've got to manage this well. And the issue with retention is that, sure, it's easy for the best clients to find better rates in a situation, especially where a carrier is going to try to come in and buy market share. I'm not saying that's what Geico's going to do. I'm just saying if any carrier enters a channel or enters the market and decides to buy some market share, which happens from time to time, every carrier's done it. If they do that, then your retention with your existing carriers becomes a focal point. You got to make sure your service and account management team understand the game and understand that it can't be a remarket or a splitting of an account, that a falling retention with your current top 2 or 3 carriers is going to be noticed. Those carrier agreements are going to be potentially in jeopardy, or those relationships are going to be in jeopardy. And so you have to have this really big picture balance and understanding that if you pick up a new carrier, Geico or not, anybody really, this comes into play. It just so happens that the new carrier that's coming into the channel happens to be one of the largest in the industry, top 2 or 3. So it becomes really different versus, say, the number 20 carrier coming into the channel.
Shane, my job is to get my client the lowest rate possible.
That's not your job. Your job is to make sure that you're protecting your client's assets. And I'm not saying that your job isn't to retain that client. I'll leave the pricing situation there. At the end of the day, your job is to manage a lot of different balls that are being dribbled down the court at the same time. You need to manage carrier relationships, which brings in retention. You need to keep producers happy, which means you got to manage your sales team. You have to understand that a market can blow into the channel really fast and a market can exit the channel really fast. So we've seen that happen before within the independent agency channel. Your job is not to just chase the cheapest price for your client. Your job is to run your business successfully and profitably. If you don't run it profitably, you're not going to be in business very long. And remember, I'm an advocate of the goal of being in business, or the goal of a business is to stay in business. That's your number one goal. Stay in business. Continue to be viable. Continue to be able to pay your people and pay yourself. And so that's where we are. And that's what's going to get some pressure over the next probably 1 to 2 years coming out of this hard market, especially if we get disruptors coming in. And keep in mind, this is a different type of disruptor than an insurtech. This is going to be different than that. Insurtechs, we know how to do it better. This is a proven market leader coming into a new channel. Different game.
The last time that happened, what did it look like?
It was felt a little differently. Nationwide went from captive agents to the independent agency channel, but they had already gone into the independent agency channel through some acquisitions, and then they did a deal with their exclusive agent, Field Force, and turned them into independent. So it wasn't as big of a disruptor to the IE channel in that case. They were trying to also find profitability, and retention was a big part of that move from being an exclusive or captive distribution to an independent agency distribution. Progressive was independent agency based and then made a big push for direct channel, still is a huge direct channel play. And maybe some of the reality around what they've done with homeowners and the acquisitions made and how they entered the homeowners market. It's just different successfully, by the way, to move from a reputation of non-standard auto to a reputation of standard preferred or a customer for all. In the 80s, Allstate entered the independent agency channel because of market restriction. So the timing of this is similar, not as bad, okay? There's still carriers available. Carriers are still writing business even though it feels like they're not. So not as bad as what happened in the 80s, where carriers not only were restricting writings, but they had completely pulled out of states, completely pulled out of marketplaces altogether. And Allstate came in and provided a lifeline to independent agencies and opened up their IA distribution channel. So this has all happened before. I think it's just the first time that we've had maybe strictly auto play, auto type carrier, commercial auto, maybe some specialty lines come into the market and come into the IA channel. Like I said, we have a lot of carriers who are just still struggling to get to profitability. So that's the part that becomes a little concerning if I'm some of those carriers.
I really like Liberty Mutual's new ad campaign, the very fresh look that they are giving. I'm wondering if it has something to do with this new disruptor. We've had Liberty doing the Limu, Emu, and Doug and all of these things. And a few months ago, I'm seeing this kind of, this is a real person, this is the real challenge they're having, and this is the solution that we offer. And I almost wonder if this was done in advance, seeing that Geico with the silliness and the British lizard and all of that. Something else with Liberty Mutual that I've noticed is that they've dropped the mutual in their advertising. They're just using the Liberty logo without the second line.
That's an interesting marketing ploy, marketing plan or approach. There's a lot of that getting to that brand. I can see why they might drop mutual, because there was a time where mutual meant something. Probably consumers were a little, I hate to say more educated, but maybe just a little bit different time where understanding the difference between a mutual company and a stock company was really important. A lot of that has gone by the wayside in terms of just building brand, and especially national brand. There's still a ton of mutual carriers in different parts of the country where mutuals dominate.
People don't know what that means.
I know from a brand standpoint, they don't understand. And that's where the agency advocates and the independent agency as educators comes into play. Why do you want to be with this mutual insurer versus this stock insurer? Those are valid things that in certain parts of the country, in certain marketplaces, that still have a ton of value and still have a place. It's still hard to compete with the mainline, huge enterprise brand building organizations out there. Liberty's an interesting piece because of the Comparion, former Liberty Personal Lines direct channel. They have their own direct channel and moved into this Comparion model. And whether you like it, agree with it, whatever is irrelevant. It's a decision, strategic decision that a company is taking. I respect that. I love the fact that we're talking about this because we're talking about a free and open market. We're talking about free enterprise system. And that's one of the things that just gets me motivated as an independent agency organization, as an advocate for the IA channel, is this is the free market working. Things are going to happen. People are going to enter. People are going to respond and may have to make decisions. And the staying in business, just understanding how to manage relationships becomes really important. What's important, what's maybe not important. There's a lot of really important things here when it comes to carrier relationship management that we're going to see and feel over the next couple of years.
Let's talk about our peeps that are winning and losing. Who's winning, who's losing?
Yeah, I'm not going to name names, but I'll say how I see it. The ones that are winning are the ones that are not trying to shrink to profitability. I know we have Shane exceptions in our organization that get laughed at a lot. Special deals that get laughed at a lot. Don't call and ask for a special deal. It ain't happening. I'm past that.
No, he's not.
Too many people that I aggravate these days. I used to only aggravate one or two. Now it's like a whole leadership team. A good friend of mine that I served on agency councils with, he was a head of agent relations at a major carrier, just retired. He always was an advocate that you can't shrink to profitability. You just can't do it. There's a lot of carriers right now who are trying to shrink to profitability. That's going to be a struggle. It's going to continue to be a struggle. Now, I'm not an actuary, so I'm not a product manager. And there would be plenty of things that in a debate that product managers would probably throw at me and say, you're not understanding this or that. And some of that could be true. I'm simply a guy that's ran a business, been on the agency side, served on carrier councils, worked with carrier management, but I've never run a product. I've never managed a product, and I've never set rate. And I've never dealt with regulators in trying to set those rates. So those are all my disclosures when I say it is interesting to me that the ones that are winning are not trying to shrink to profitability, and the ones that are losing feel or appear to be attempting to shrink or idle to profitability. The ones that are winning are still growing. The ones that, they haven't shut the faucet off to agents for distribution. They are not making you go down in the trenches and climb under barbed wire and trying to figure out how to get a policy bound. Like, it's not at that level. And so shrinking to profitability to me is a problem. Full disclosure, if we were in a debate, just a one-on-one debate, me and some product manager from any of these companies that have decided to do that, I don't have that knowledge of that other side. That's my full disclosure. It just has never been something I've seen work. At some point, you have to grow. In the insurance business, you're not going to retain 100% of your business. And you're trying to run off some of the unprofitable business. So run off the unprofitable business. But in doing that, a lot of times carriers run off the profitable business, not necessarily intentional. They just don't see what's going to happen here. Every carrier is going to set their best rate for the best customers and the best customer segment. And so you just have to be careful that as you try to slow it down and you try to shrink to profitability, that you don't run off your good customers while you're doing that.
Unfortunately, your good customers sometimes are the easiest ones to run off. It happens because we're so busy chasing the not so good customers.
That's an absolute fact. We spend a lot of time on that bottom 10 to 15%. We do it as agency owners. We spend a lot of energy because we're salespeople and we don't like losing. I'll say that's one symptom. I do not like to lose. A lot of salespeople are like that. And we find ourselves getting stuck in that hate to lose and not rising above to the business owner, agency owner, CEO, and going, yeah, I got my CEO hat on. That's, as I call, bottom feeder. Since we're not a consumer-facing podcast, I'll use the word bottom feeder. You don't like me using that. I think you used the word tilapia or something like that. So anyway, you end up with these customers who suck the life out of your service staff and beat you over the head constantly and drain the energy out of your agency. And you don't intentionally chase them. You say you're not going to chase them, but you end up chasing them anyway because you hate losing. I understand. But you've got to find some discipline around that and be able to categorize not chasing those customers. Carriers understand that really well. What really is a struggle is they don't understand how to not chase that customer and chase the good customer at the same time. There's probably some regulatory problems in there somewhere that's probably going to be at the core of that I'm not experienced with, but there's something in that recipe or scenario that leads us to this path where we accidentally run off good customers when we're trying to run off the bad customers.
So this gossip session with Shane was fun.
Everybody can gossip, but we didn't name names other than things that didn't matter.
True gossip's when you're naming names. We did more of the prayer request kind of gossip.
That's awesome. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine. Prayer request, is that really prayer request or is it just a gossip session?
I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Florence Griffith Joyner. I believe in the impossible because no one else does.
Attitude's a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
Ready to get the ball rolling with your independent agency? Learn more at IntegraAgent.com. That's IntegraAgent.com. Thank you for joining us on IA Forward. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now or learn more at IAForward.com.